It's been a total cosmic
boss
joke.
woman.
Super cosmic joke.
Quiet on the set.
Okay. Oh, one thing at the end. When we're finished, and I say goodbye to the audience and close up. Welcome to the Art of Conscious Living. I have a very important show today. It's child-parent, and the panel is Search for Hope, child-parent discussion. At the moment in USA, we are talking about gun control, and the cities are now in discussion of what to do about this. I want to go a little bit deeper underneath this. I see this as a symptom. Something has happened long before a person takes a gun in their hand and does violence. Long before a prescription medication is given to them. So today we're going to talk about what it is to be the solutions about all of this. And in saying that, there's a book called Grand Theft Childhood. And it's a surprising truth about violent video games and what happens with that. The children are insensitive to world violence. They're insensitive to violence. They've been watching very, very violent videos since a very young age, 5 years old and onwards. So it's nothing for them to take a gun and actually do it. I'm not saying that everybody is going to be doing that, but if somebody is overly medicated, and that seems to be where we're going with medication. So when another person makes you suffer, it is because the suffering is deeply within himself, and his suffering is spilling over. He does not need punishment. He needs help. So in that vein of speaking from Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist teacher, I'd like to introduce the guest today, Daniel Holdman. He's an incredible spiritual advisor and minister, and an absolutely extraordinary visual artist. Welcome to the show, Danielle.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And we have Shiloh Boss. She's a young woman who's an extraordinary woman who has a lot to say about keeping in times in alignment with what we are doing and the times that we're living in now, opposed to the living on our old archaic methods of thinking and being. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We also have Berenice Meza from Challenge Day, challengeday.org. It goes into the school systems and it gives real, absolute, superb solutions about having teenagers develop a sense of self and preparing them for the world. So thank you and welcome.
Good to be
Thanks for
here.
having us.
So I'd like to start with Shiloh. Shiloh, what do you feel is going on today in the world with all of the medication, of the pharmaceutical medication from the children from the youngest age? It seems like they're very quick to prescribe. And what is happening with that in regards to being possibly over-medicated? And what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I think you said your perspective is that we might be jumping to that quite quickly, right? And that this perception that there's a sickness in the child that needs to be medicated. I think if we were taking a deeper look, like we're intending to today, that we would look underneath that sort of pharmaceutical medicated response, and even the allopathic perception that there's a sickness in the subject, but more so that perhaps we've been creating a society that does not nurture health, that does not bring our health and wellness into the forefront, and is more focused on sickness. And so if we were to take that frame, we might then look deeper into the food, the nutrition that we're eating, and also our deeper relationships, the social fabric that's going on that's either supporting our wellness or focusing on our sickness. And I think we could perhaps all agree that we are more focused on our sickness and defaults than really leaning into and nurturing our wellness.
Well, it speaks very well to what I said about, I see that the gun control issue and the pharmaceutical are the symptoms. But what is actually happening there in the homes with the children and the parent and the communication? Is there a lack of that happening? The two parents are working, the children seem to be on their own more than ever, and they're being lost on the information age, on the internet and on PlayStations and games. So there's an isolation going on. So actually, where is the family structure and connection to community? And when that is lost, then that isolation starts happening, and then the neurosis starts to set in. So let's talk before. Right now, it's gun control, it's pharmaceutical, that's what we're hearing. Before that, before the gun control, what is the issues there? Danielle, what do you think about this?
Well, I want to just say a little bit more about the pharmaceutical thing, because I think that's a real key deal, and I hope most people are aware that I think just about every one of these school killings, especially with younger people, they've been on some sort of medication that was, and you know, the whole thing is these kids are meant to be learning about life and doing natural things, and if they're put in an environment that stultifies and contains them, and you know, from going out and playing and connecting and touching each other and stuff, they have you know, responses. They're like symptoms, and instead of treating them and giving them what they need in a natural way, they look at it as something that's wrong with them, and they medicate them and introduce something that's unnatural to the body, that's actually harmful. And even the antidepressants they're finding are actually giving them more suicidal tendencies and so forth. There's a lot of studies and research on all this. And it's just this, not just a lazy approach on the part of the psychiatrists and doctors and so forth, but it's been promoted and encouraged and fostered by the greed of the pharmaceutical companies to make profits. That this is something they want to do, is to have these complacent, conforming, obedient, dull worker bees in our society that are going to be, you know, conforming to some model instead of unique, vibrant, alive individuals that are expressing themselves the way, you know, in all these variety of ways. So it's this kind of movement towards a kind of a conformity into kind of these worker drones type children to grow up to be that way, and it's a huge problem, and it comes into play here. The whole pharmaceutical approach.
You said something very powerful, that they are looking at what is wrong with that teenager instead of looking at what is right. And that is the key to all of this. Basically, when you're looking at what is wrong, then you want to suppress it and to diminish it and to remove or to find fault. But if you look at it from integral psychology way, they look at it as what is right, what needs to be done, what more can be done to help you, to support you.
Right. There's this doctor that's an author, Gabor Mate, who's done a lot of research. He gives talks and so forth on this. He's written books on ADHD and all these related types of, I guess, whatever they're called.
Disorders. Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing, the depths of which he understands this and presents a clear thinking of how we should be addressing these young people and how wrong it is what's going on now.
Well, Berenice, in challengeday.org, what do they do to address these issues?
Well, I think it's very interesting, first of all, to just address the topics that are at hand. We talked about prescription and how we look at what's wrong with a young person, instead of looking at ways to be able to engage in that disconnect with them, like what is missing, what is the connection piece, that whether it's at school or at home, it could be in many different ways, it could be in many different mediums, but instead of looking at what is it that's missing, a lot of times it's in our own structure at school. A lot of times the ways that we have our children being taught, it's not a way, not everybody learns the same way. There's a lot of different learning methods and different engaging type of, the layout that it's done in the paradigm, I guess, that in schools we're not really teaching kids on how to communicate with each other. We're not teaching them life skills. We're teaching them how to grow up and be a part of our society that it is now, focused on money, focused on how to be what we call successful, and everybody gets to interpret that in every way. So what Challenge Day does is we go in and we dissect the entire thing. We allow everybody to come in, regardless of any so-called disability, so-called label, anybody that could be in medication or not medication. We invite them in and we start talking about what's really going on. What are some of the things that you don't get to talk about that are truly happening for you? For some children might be, I don't get to talk to my parents. They don't even listen, or they're not there, or I lost them when I was younger. For a lot of kids, might be that at school they don't have a lot of friends that they can trust, or that they can talk about the issues that really are meaningful to them. So there's a lot of different things that are happening for our youth that instead of actually addressing it, we want to dismiss it because, like you said, it could be a lazy approach that we want to just kind of fix real quick, give them a little pill here and there, distract them from what's truly happening, and then all of those emotions bottle up, and we end up having situations like now, what it is, gun control, all of those shootings that are happening now at an epidemic rate all over the nation. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but Challenge Day's approach is about, let's talk about what's really going on. Let's not look about what your label is or what you've done, because it could look many different ways for many different people. Self-medicating, maybe drugs, addictions, all kinds of different ways, or maybe overworking. Doesn't matter what it looks like for you. Let's talk about what really is going on. So that's the approach we take.
I think it's very important to find out that particular child, what they're going to be. I think we're all born, and when we are born, there's certain children that are musically inclined, there's others that are wanting to be a lawyer, there's others that want to be a doctor, and so on.
Athletic.
Yeah.
So when you find out exactly at the youngest age,
Yeah.
it's so beautiful and everything becomes so effortless. Mm-hmm. The problem is that you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. Mm-hmm. So fit that child and encourage that child and find out right from the very beginning of where they are, what their innate possibilities are, what they will feel for wanting to do. Mm-hmm. And be sensitive to that. What does Challenge Day do about this?
Well, our workshop is an experiential workshop, so everybody has their own individual experience. But there is a particular activity we do with everybody where we ask everyone to share their dreams. And we give them a time frame to do it with a partner. And a lot of times, young people might not say anything. A lot of times they might be very verbal about it. But the teaching part about it is that after everybody's given time to share their dream, we tell them that the way that we actually start working towards our dream is to actually start talking about it. We don't know who we're going to meet that's going to help us get there. We don't know if we're already realizing that as we're saying it, we might want something else. So we need to really start focusing on what is it that we want, and not what other people want us to be or what our own environment is predicting that we should be because of many different factors, whether it's race or economic access to things or just the way you were brought up, culture, religion, immense amount of different oppression that might happen in determining what it is that you want to become. So we ask them to exclude all of that from their thinking and just, what really fills you? What is it that you want to do? And start talking about it so that people can support you. And if you don't know what that is, start thinking about it. So we just enable them to start that conversation.
Challenge Day has been around for 29 years. I'm sure that you must have extraordinary amounts of success and great stories. Would you just share a few of the stories, for example, of what the best of the worst or the best, yes.
Well, there's always, or it never cease to amaze me when there's a community we go into and we usually have an adult coordinator, the person that's been planning this event for quite a bit, and they usually hear either from teachers, we're excited that this young person's gonna go. They might have their own reasons why they're thinking they're excited for them, whether it's because they're gonna empower this young person or because they just feel they need it because of their behavior at school, whether it's disruptive. But the most impactful thing for me is to always find out a young person in the group, whether they've talked about it to me or not, the one that's completely disengaged, the one that wants nothing to do with connecting with anybody the first half of the day. And at the end of the day, when we give an opportunity for young people to just share their experience, we call it the speak out, we give them the mic, we tell them, tell us what you learned today or what you liked or what surprised you. And usually that one kid, most of the time, stands up and says, I thought today was gonna be just another boring day where people told me what to do. And maybe they'll say, today I found out it's okay to talk about how I feel. Or I had no idea others feel the same things that I do. I felt for the first time that I'm not alone in my life. Maybe there's people in my life that I can reach out to after today. There's just endless experiences that I've encountered, but the ones that always never seem to amaze me are the ones that people are skeptical of their behavior. And then when they put them in challenge, they thinking, yeah, they need this. And they're the ones that always blow our minds at the end, like they had the most amazing experience.
So what I'm hearing you say is it's basically about empowering oneself.
Absolutely.
And at that tender age, between the ages of 1 year old, actually, until 18, it's so fragile. And during that time, there's a lot of insecurity going on. Yeah. So it's very much about allowing that person to express themselves and to feel that they have a voice.
Yeah.
I mean, there can be nothing worse than feeling like you're trapped inside your body. Exactly. And that you're all alone and there's a separation between you and others.
Yeah, so. You know, we've really focused on impacting young people because we realize that middle school and high school is where a lot of our adapting on who we want to be starts happening, like decisions, you know, like what kinds of people do I want to hang out with? Do I want to be involved in sports or do I want to be involved in art? And a lot of times those decisions truly impact who we become after. A lot of us realize after high school that, never mind, I don't want to be anything that I thought I wanted to be when I was that young, and now I realize these are the things that I want to do. So we realize that if we actually start asking the questions way earlier, and empowering young people to have their voices be heard, that what they feel, it's completely normal, that because society has stirred away from talking about feelings because people have labels on top of that, that we all have them, and whether or not we talk about them, there's people that can support you in listening, because the truth is we don't have to fix people's problems, and that's not what Challenge Day does. A lot of people are under the impression that Challenge Day will come in and fix it. No, Challenge Day goes in and we show a possibility of what a community in support of one another can be like. It's up to the community to adapt that atmosphere, those kinds of interactions, and enable a place, a safe place for adults and young people to be able to have those conversations. So that's mainly, the approach of Challenge Days. Let's create communities or empower communities to be their own backbone, to be their own support system.
Let me just ask you, how many schools are you in the United States at this point?
My
Approximately.
goodness. Oh my gosh, we do so many. And
You're based in California, but
yes, we're based out of Concord, California, and we do international days, and we do them all over the nation. We do about 300 plus days a year, and they're not all in the same schools, and they're not repeat schools, year after year.
Are you in
So-
most states?
Yes, we are.
Okay, and you're also in Europe.
Yes, we're in the Netherlands. We are in the works of going to Israel and Australia, and we've done Challenge Days in Japan. We go all over the U.S., including Alaska and Hawaii, and in Canada. So we're pretty much all over, and we just want to continue to spread the word that empower the youth. They have a lot to say, and it's important what they got to say.
Lovely. Thank you.
Can I add just a little testimony on this? Because I experienced that some years ago as a volunteer. And I watched the kids come in the beginning of the day, all kind of being cool and all separate and in their little cliques. And by the end of the day, after they'd gone through this experiential process, the people that had been bullying each other were like hugging, they were in tears, they were in their hearts, they were all like totally transformed. And I, as a grown man, was weeping at the triumph of the heart that I felt in the experience and the witnessing and all. It was very, very profound.
And where do you think was that exact moment that happened?
Well, they have this one thing that they build up to, that the walk crossing the line, which we won't even go into, but it's a very powerful experience. And after that, these kids are just, they're transformed. And they've dropped this mode that they grew up in, that they were, the environment that taught them to be too competitive and critical and cliquey and mean to each other and all that stuff, and it's gone.
All right. Give me a little bit about walking the line, what that is.
Why don't you could probably articulate it better, however it's best without spoiling, because it's kind of a surprise.
Yeah.
It's
Right, well, without giving it all away.
No problem.
What is
Basically what it is an activity that's done in complete silence, which is why it's so impactful. People don't have to explain details about anything. And we ask adults and young people to participate, and we call certain categories of where oppression might show up in your life. And it could be anything from a death of a family member to get put down in school or get called certain names. So it could be any type of category. We have about 30 something that get called out in this activity. And so we ask people to cross the line whether it applies to them and turn around and face the group without explaining.
So are you saying you switch roles?
No.
No.
I'm calling out these categories, and adults and young people are crossing the line. They're all standing in one side of the room.
if they've had
And
that
if it
happen to them.
applies to you, what I'm calling out,
So they're claiming
you cross
what-
the line.
Okay.
Yeah, and it doesn't, and just so that you know, it's never pinpointing or calling anybody out on anything. It's always a category says you or someone you love or you know of someone that has been through A, B, C, and D, which I don't tell you what it is so that I don't spoil it for you if you ever get to go. Because the element of surprise is really important. But the biggest part about that activity is not necessarily what the severity of what it is they're crossing for. It's the compassion. It's the realization that somebody might be going through something. You have no idea what it is. You might think that they have the most perfect life, or you might think that they had never experienced something like that. Maybe I can relate to them. And it doesn't mean that you're gonna go ahead and make that connection and start being best friends. It just means, oh my gosh, I'm not alone.
So you're fostering more understanding.
Fostering compassion
and
and
that they're not
understanding.
alone.
And that they're
Absolutely.
not alone. That no matter what they've been through, there's someone else in this world that could understand. If they choose to ever talk about it, because we don't encourage that. That's people's choice. Because we also don't force them to cross the line. We say, if you feel safe enough to.
Right.
So they have that choice.
In your
There might
time,
be
in
people
your
that
terms.
don't cross it, but it applies to them. And even if they don't cross, they see who did, who had the courage to, and they get to feel that. Man, those people had courage. I'm going through something similar, and I didn't. So
Lovely.
it's very experiential.
Thank you. Shiloh, you have so much expertise and so much wisdom about what is happening at this time opposed to outdated modes of thinking and ways of being. This is the new millennium and a new time. And are we not acting like this was like 50 years ago in the thinking of where we are at and the way we are reacting and being?
Great question. I'd say in some ways yes, but in some ways no. Because the fact that we're seeing all of this acting out, right, is a sign that we are in the midst of change. The fact that there is such this rise of epidemic, that is an indicator that the system is in stress, and that the old mode of operating is no longer working. So if we were in the old mode, then we would just be kind of going about our business and doing it as we're told. But because there's all of this acting out, that's an indicator that we need change. And what I would love to see as an evolutionary strategist and change agent is that sense of, for us as communities, and I think that this is one of the things that makes Challenge Day such a powerful impact in the world, is that it creates a moment in time where we can say, you know what, look what's going on. And that's the big, big piece that is this is the time for that. For us to actually say, you know what, this is what's going on. This is what I really think and feel about it. And also to admit, we're off track. We've gotten off track. There's too much sickness, there's too much suffering, there's too much disconnect, there's too much oppression. And you know what? For an example, like you just shared, this exercise, we're all going through it. So what is happening? Then perhaps we can take a look and say that the circumstances, the structure, the societal norms are actually not true. We don't want to adhere to that system. We don't want to pretend that we're sick because we can't fit into those boxes. Those boxes are outdated. These structures are no longer serving life. And so then, in our community and in our families, then we can say, we can basically have a truthing, and start moving towards that sense of truth and reconciliation. Well, what is really going on? What do we need to take care of? And then what next? What really is the dream and the passion?
Shiloh, give me an example of what would be happening in a home, in a family life.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it's two parents that are working and they have two children, a boy and a girl.
Mm-hmm.
Give me an example of what you think should be happening at the home base.
Mm-hmm.
Should they have family meetings?
I think
How
so.
would they be connecting in this world of the information age in 2013 as opposed to 50 years ago?
I think that, I think you really hit it on the head, is that can we create a space together in our relationships? And really it does probably start with the binary heads of the household, are the parents. They are the masculine and the feminine ruler of the roost, per se, right? But really, in any way that it can happen, it can two siblings could do it for each other. That sense, but really it's about creating a space. It's about creating space and time where we can just drop in, get present, and connect with authentically.
Authenticity.
Well, it seems to me that we have lost that sense of connection. So there, if we could have something that could give measured results that we could look at, that could be a possibility. I'm suggesting that in the information age, we are desensitized. We're cut off from our own natural, organic sense of being. So what would you suggest that could happen here to start that? Like you mentioned sisters. Mm-hmm. What could they do to start to communicate?
Well, this is what one thing I'd like to highlight, and I think because it can happen on all scales, is the power of being authentic and the power of reflecting. Just paying attention to myself and also the circumstances. And how is the circumstances how am I showing up in the circumstances? And is it working? Is it challenging? Would I want it to be different? And so we talked about, you said this idea of our true purpose, and you were talking about this idea of what is the dream, right? And so what we're looking at is the current circumstances that don't feel good and are outdated, and then we have the dream of really how life is wanting to live through us. And so if we can create time and space to get real and talk about what's going on out there and inside, and talk about this journey of the to the from. What's happening now and where do I really want to be? And there's something so profound in my experience of hosting intergenerational dialogues or resiliency cafes. The power of conversation is, it's immeasurable when we actually can create a space to talk about what matters to us. Mm-hmm. It's profound, without doubt.
I'd like to voice this question to you, Danielle. Basically, you've spent your life of searching for self-awareness. This has been very important to you. I think the crux of the whole matter is that people do not have a sense of themselves. They are basically do not have that self-awareness. If you do not have self-awareness, then you're living outside yourself. You're putting all your attention outside. If you have your attention outside, basically it's on cultural, social, economics, as such. So if you don't have a sense of self, what chance do you have? So let's speak on that.
Well, they've done studies on how important the environment that someone grows up in, and if one is in a ghetto and they grow up and all they know is guns and this and that, then that's what they adapt to, or whatever their environment is. And there's the structures of authority in our current society here are so off their ideal purpose and way that it's creating this symptom of all this stuff going on, down below. Like the solution that the highest authorities in our country have for not only just not getting what they want politically, but even for catering to the needs and greeds of corporate demands, they use violence. That's what the highest authorities in this country do. They even on a local level, they use violence to get their will done.
Henceforth, they're setting an example.
And they're setting this example, and then they get, like, these congressmen are all on TV watching, responding to this news with all this dismay of, like, this horror of, like, oh, this person killed 26 people. Well, these people, they're the same people that have voted for having the same, even worse done to tens of thousands of children in other countries that are just as valuable, just as divine as these 26 kids that were killed. And that blood is on their hands, and they're not even aware of that. Mm-hmm. So there's this kind of disconnect from role modeling that they're doing in this society, and the kids in this environment, they model it.
Well, let's speak on your search for your self-realization all your life. And basically, you are a spiritual minister, so this is very important to you. I think it's the most important thing that anybody can do. Basically, when you become self-realized, what is self-realization? It's about having awareness of self.
Well, it's this unity consciousness. It's basically looking enough inward into the nature of oneself to discover that this concocted personality is really just a contrivance. It's a fabricated identity, and that one's true identity is a unique expression of one divine whole that's living its life through all of life, not just humans. Humans happen to be the most sophisticated version of it, but through all of life, all animals and all plants and all the life that's going on. And having that awareness totally defeats any of these notions of violence or greed or being mean to one another and all this sort of stuff that you address so powerfully in the challenge day. Having that unity consciousness, awareness, makes it so that a person naturally just wants to be kind to another part of oneself, a type of an idea, or to be generous, or to be decent and respectful, to one another. Those things just come natural when you have that awareness. So looking within to one's spiritual truth, that's what's found. All the great teachers and all the people that have made that search come up with the same finding and the same result.
What are your thoughts on that we are not separate from others? Because in my thinking, if you feel like you are totally alone and it's you against the world or you against others, and others have no absolutely effect or anything that matters to you, I think how profoundly horrible this can be.
And that's what's going on. It gives people license to then be mean or to steal or to hurt or to kill because they're separate from them. But that unity consciousness, it just replaces that. Mm-hmm. So that, believing in their separateness, because it's one of those things that's not like either or, it's both and. We are separate, but we're also part of a oneness, that oneness awareness. And that's really what's going on now is there's, like you said, there's this blow-ups and these horrible things happening as indication that transition to that type of an awareness as a species is taking place and is direly needed at these times, because look at what happens when we believe in our separateness. We then can then think that we're better than another person, and then we can then use other people as slaves or as whatever, and then we can take from them. We can do all this stuff because they're not us. They're separate, and we're better than they are.
Right. Daniel, what you're bringing up is there's a classic saying in transpersonalist psychology that you have to have a healthy self before you can have the great self-realization. Mm-hmm. And so this is some of this space that we're looking at, and that to have a healthy self, it isn't really just about the relationship with ourself, but also the relationship with others. Mm-hmm. And so this key piece that I think is critical to looking at the suffering that's happening in the world, creating conditions and environments where we can be authentic, where it is safe, is this capacity of the I and the thou relationship. Mm. Our empathy. Can we have compassion? Can I know myself, what I'm thinking and feeling, and also make room for what you're thinking and feeling? Mm. And can we then find our relationship together? And this is actually a doorway into the oneness. It's a very relative, kind of realistic, 3D experience of our unity, in a diverse manner, right? And then that I and thou relationship really is often what helps us develop a healthy self. That's in a good family upbringing or a good community upbringing. we know our place, we know each other, we know how to relate well, and then ultimately through that, all of that dynamism, then we grow up into a healthier self, and then in that space we can have the great self-realization. So there is a developmental sequence, right? And I think in this modern world of so much interconnectivity, so much information, and so much unmet need, we are in this great paradox of just all of this awesome innovation and opportunity and powerful self-expression and realization, as well as all of this unmet need, all of this mess, pollution, violence, separation. So this is a real ripe paradox. And I think for us as families and as communities, as social systems, if we're going to be choosing a healthier route, if we really do want to go into the future together, we have to be able to hold that paradox. And we have to be able to look at both the grand oneness, but also where other people may be in their reality, in their own developmental stage. They may not be ready to embrace that yet. And yet, if we are sitting in that seat of the ultimate oneness, then we would help build a pathway for that.
And role model for them in a healthy way.
And accept it without feeling like there is... That they're not a part of it, or that they want to be included.
Right.
We have to accept where people are, like you said, in their own path to the oneness.
Right, and building a bridge for that, right? If we were all connected, we would build a bridge so that we can all kind of rest into that place of health and connectivity. And I think that's, so I love Challenge Day being here, because you are a introjection into the system. And that is really, it's like you were asking me for examples, and I started with dialogue. I think we need to go into dialogue, discovery, design, or really redesign of the major systems of our world.
So when you say redesign, what level is that going to happen? Because we cannot look to
God help us let it happen on all levels.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And we can't ask our politicians to do this for us in the government. So how can we do this on a local level?
Well, again, how can we do it on a local level? A lot of it starts with any single person having the dream of the life the purpose that they want. Thank you, Victoria, for creating this kind of space, this kind of forum where we can look deeper. And that's an example. What's one example? The example of the couple that started Challenge Day is another example. We feel this passion and this purpose. We can design something and make it available for the world. Myself and different colleagues, we do dialogue, and actually there's the Occupy Cafe team. Actually, many of them are seated in Sandy Hook, and in Sandy Hook right now there is a huge groundswell of town hall meetings where they're dialoguing and they're saying, yes, this has been a massive tragedy that's occurred, but what really matters here? What do we really need? What's important? And lo and behold, all sorts of resiliency is coming up in the community, because yes, like I said, these tragedies are happening, but they're creating a crack in where the light can get in, right? That sense of this is not working. There is a major malfunction. So now what?
And the part that Challenge Day, where it actually talks to that specific, something's not working, we need to change it. That's exactly the feeling that happens in the workshop when you realize, okay, we've all crossed these lines. This oppression thing's not working. How can we shift it? And our founders, Rich and Yvonne, they came up with a formula for change, and it's 3 steps. It's notice, choose, and act. So the workshop is designed in that way. We first notice our interactions with each other, how we behave. Then we choose, what are some of the things, the dreams? What are some of the things you want? How can we better interact with people? What are some of the things you would like to see happen to others or to you? And then act. what are we going to do to make it happen? And I think it's really important, all of the different factors that we've been talking about, like how young people and all of us are having role models that are reacting to circumstances and situations in violent ways, in ways that are not very much what we want to strive for as a, world peace type of environment and life where all of us feel safe and celebrated for who we are, whether we've had flaws in the past, and acknowledgement for those things that had led us to be who we are now. But it's important to acknowledge, to be able to say, yes, I have lived that way. I notice I don't like it because it makes me feel this way, or it makes me act or disconnect from these people in this way. I choose to make it different. And what is it that I need to do? And the one thing that I really, really feel passionate about is what you were talking about, that we need to acknowledge it for ourselves, that before we actually put it out there and say, let's change the world, in order to do that, we got to change our thinking, who we are, and create that ripple effect from our own actions. As I live my life, just like you said with your spirituality and that awaken within you, if you act in a way that you feel proud of the impact you make in every interaction in your daily life, people notice. You create an impact whether or not you even have a conversation with them. And then they make that notice and decide for themselves how they want to change. And of course, then we can come together, as we all are focused on us to be better people, then we can all focus on being better together versus imposing it on other people. That's what I'm trying to get to. Like, it needs to be a want for myself, therefore I am, but I'm not going to impose it on others. They got to be ready for themselves.
That's right. And
So
then we can
two
be an
very
invitation.
powerful
Exactly.
factors are coming up. One, empowering oneself, and the other, being very proactive with that.
When
Very
people
powerful,
will
very
emulate
beautiful.
what they're attracted to.
Yeah.
And this, just look on television and see, all the good guys, the cop shows and all those things. The good guys are always using violence, and they glorify it. They make it all look so good, that that's the right thing to do, and they're justified in everything. It's just, but like you say, introducing these types of programs and the dialogue and everything that are showing them an alternative to that,
Right.
that there's something that's better, they will emulate that.
Well, it gets more graphic than that. It's the PlayStations and the very
Right.
violent video games that are so real and so terribly violent. And can you imagine a 2, 3-year-old, 5-year-old, and they've been sitting there until they're 18 years old?
That's all
And
they
they
get
do
fed.
hours and hours of that every day. And that's the way their mind is thinking. I'd like to talk about nutrition, because I think this is so very important. We have a society that is based on not really understanding that the nutrients of food in its wholesome state is important. Basically, in India, when they eat, whatever goes into their mouth, they know that this is giving them certain nutrient, whatever vitamin, whatever mineral, whatever enzyme. Here it seems to be in America, we're eating for the pleasure. We don't know that, yes, this is protein, this is carbohydrates, and basically it's all very processed, so it's really not happening in the way of giving the nutrients that a young child or young person would need. So who would like to speak about that, of nutrition?
Well, I'll start.
Okay.
Yes, it's very important that we acknowledge that a lot of us at a very young age are not familiar with a healthy nutrition guideline. We're not really used to, just common America, there's fast food everywhere. Our lifestyles are so busy, they don't allow us to have that. It takes a lot of work to be able to have the time to prepare a good quality, healthy meal to provide families. So a lot of people are not necessarily thinking, I'm gonna feed my child not such nutritious food, but I don't have the time to prepare it, so I'm gonna do the quick way today and then plan for later tomorrow.
And they get Fruit Loops for breakfast every morning.
Exactly, and then a lot of times, the food that's more accessible, like if we really think about our economy, if we think about how our nation is suffering from so many pay cuts, a lot of people out of jobs, a lot of people out of homes. Their last thing in their mind is to pay $20 for an organic piece of chicken. So the access to food that's accessible for them, it's cheap, but it's full of sugar and it's full of non-nutrition, starchy stuff. We're now gaining more awareness around what's in our food, what kinds of chemicals are put into our meats and vegetables. We're just now, all of us, starting to, even with the law that just was up for being passed on, whether or not we want to know that stuff is in there.
Yeah,
so,
and
then is that going to cost us more to know? So there's a lot of wanting to eat better, wanting to provide better nutrition for our families, but then that hurdle of it's going to cost us a lot more. There's not a lot of funds to provide all of America with the means to do it. And what does it entail? How do we train people to actually start eating right? Because a lot of us might not know. And the way that it shows up in school is the same thing. Money becomes an issue, so then schools provide for all of the low-income kids that might need support with breakfast and lunch, options that are not so healthy because they want to get more in volume versus quality for their buck. And that makes sense. They want to be able to feed more kids, but then they might not get the means to be able to make the healthier choices. So there's a lot in discussion about that.
There's also like such low awareness around the direct correlation or the results of eating these poor foods, like having sugar and no real nourishment, creates these moods, these depressions and these anxieties and the ADHD and the this and the that, that they're then treating as if there's something wrong with the kid.
Right.
And giving them this, like, inducing these harmful chemicals to alter their mood. And that mood, a lot of it is because they're not nourished.
Yeah.
There's other factors too, of course, but there's still a lack of awareness on the studies that have been done on, like, when you feed some child really good, wholesome, healthy green vegetables and all this good stuff, and cut out all the crap that they sell as food, it's not really food, and then they're vibrant and they're alive and they're happy and they're balanced and they're healthy, just
less cloudy. Also, being able to receive more information and be more aware and more alert. I think, at least for myself, I've experienced that in my life where I feel that I've followed a really healthy lifestyle where I also include, some fitness and stuff, and I feel really great, and I can feel how I can pay more attention and actually have more energy even if I sleep a little less, and it's just like finding out that a lot of our diet does have to do with our behavior.
yeah.
We just have a few moments. It has gone by so quick, and we've touched on to so little, but a lot. But thank you. Shiloh, I'd like you to close with your final thoughts on what we can do here in society. And I know I've asked you this several times, but I think it's very, very important. I think people are looking at a way to have guidance and help, but they don't even know where to look. So,
Gosh, I don't know where to look. Well, I would say, there's a part of me that wants to say turn off your TV, but turn off your mainstream TV, right? And turn on to some of these alternative opportunities. I'm just thinking about, there's so many amazing new videos and movies and shows like this that are out there that really are speaking the truth and creating a space and creating information that is really about being empowering to everyone, being empowering to the person, versus maybe filling the pockets of the large corporations.
The propaganda.
And the propaganda, correct. So that idea of go ahead and look under the hood, look to see really what's out there. There's so much that is available, and then create the space in our lives to notice, to choose. To notice how we're doing and how it affects, and to choose something that makes us feel alive, that makes us feel more connected, that allows us to feel more authentic. I think when we tap into our life vitality and tap into the truth, it is a breath of fresh air. We know that we're there, and we actually can see more clearly, and we can connect more easily when we're in that space. And then in some ways, I think the action is naturally obvious from there. And we can just, there's a classic saying, start where you are. Just make a simple step. And whether it's emulating an energy that you choose internally, being able to share authentically, we need each other in the great shift. And so, but it is easy to find allies. And we hold each other in that journey together. We hold each other accountable. We hold each other when we need a shoulder to cry on, and we hold each other to inspire our dreams and celebrate our movement forward.
Well, thank you everybody for sharing your absolute beauty, your experience, and your wisdom. I'm very honored and very, very happy.
Thanks for having this conversation. I think it's an important one, and there's probably a lot more similar that will be very useful and meaningful for people.
And that we shall do.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you. Thank you. From the art of conscious living, do take care of yourselves and take care of others. Thank you.